Greetings, my name is Ogan Gurel, and it is a great honor and pleasure to be presenting to you here at NextRise 2020. The topic of my presentation will be Go Global, the what, the why, the when, the where, the who, and the how of going global for Korean startups. I have a number of affiliations, most in Korea, of course. I've been in Korea for 10 years. I'm a professor at the Solbridge International School of Business, where I teach marketing and innovation. I'm chief medical officer at Somagen, a division of Macrogen, a genomic testing company. I'm visiting professor at DIGIS, the Daegu Gyeongbok Institute of Science and Technology, where I teach innovation and bioelectromagnetics, as well as the convergence of science and art. I'm Chief Scientific Officer at FRT Field Robot Technology that produces wearable robots for industrial, military, and healthcare applications. I'm a member of the Healthcare Advisory Panel at CREST, a digital health cluster, which is actually in Malaysia, a public-private partnership. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Eidware, a digital healthcare company that produces sound mind cognitive training, among other products and services. I'm venture partner at a cross-border Israeli-Korea venture capital firm called Yozma Group, and I held an honorary appointment in Australia at the Center for Neural Engineering at the University of Melbourne. I can be reached on LinkedIn, and my email is ogangurel@gmail.com. So let us begin Go Global. What, why, when, where, who, and how. I start with a picture, a famous picture from 1930 of Albert Einstein, the very famous scientist, perhaps the most renowned scientist, and Sir Arthur Eddington. We will refer to this picture later, and I think it'll be very clear what it means to go global with this picture. So first of all, we'll do this as a kind of brainstorming, and there are many methods of brainstorming, including mind mapping, concept diagrams, business model canvas, flowcharts, etc. One form of brainstorming is starbursting. It is a form of brainstorming that focuses on generating questions, and there are 6 elements to the star. And so we're going to answer the question about, or the issue about Go Global, by studying what, why, when, where, who, and how. So first we're going to begin with what. What are we talking about? What is the topic? One issue is the interesting choice of the word global versus the word international. Globalization has had some negative connotations with financial aspects, financial globalization, etc. I think the better term is international, between nations, between countries, between cultures. I will be using the term global, but actually what I probably mean is more international. And in fact, in 1986, when I graduated from Harvard, President Derek Bok, who was the president at that time, gave a very important speech to the graduates, the baccalaureate address. So this is June 4th, 1986. And even though the title in the Crimson says Bok Attacks United States Foreign Policy, he was of course talking to the graduating seniors, which I was a member of the class. And he was telling them to go international. He said you should go out, use your education, and help the outside, and engage with the outside world, and learn from the outside world, and also bring ideas to the outside world. And in fact, as I mentioned, I've been 10 years in Korea, and I've been following, in a way, what Derek Bok, the president of Harvard, told us when I was a young graduating senior. And he said some things about the speech were related to foreign policy. He said to learn to coexist with people, different peoples, requires the long-term involvement of many people like yourself. Above all, we need the influence of a tough-minded citizenry, which is the best bulwark against the belief that America is endowed with some superior virtue. He was very pro-American, very proud of America, but also knew that America did not have all the right answers, that we had to learn from the outside, we had to share with the outside. And this message resonates with me to this day. I try to be international, I try to learn from others, and I also try to share what I've learned with others internationally. Also speaking there was telling the graduating seniors to comfort the afflicted, but also, very interestingly, to afflict the comfortable. In other words, when people are complacent about the way the world is and satisfied, she was telling us graduating seniors that we should go out and try to change things. So that has also been my personal philosophy. So that will actually, as you see, or will see, be part of this presentation. So what is a global mindset? First, we must define what a global mindset is not. Global mindset is not English speaking. In other words, it's not just speaking English. Global mindset is more than that. In other words, English is just a tool for global communication. So just speaking English here and there is not a global mindset. A global mindset is several things. One is openness to learning, adapting to new cultures, managing different cultures, understanding, as Derek Bok mentioned, president of Harvard, there is no one correct way. The American way is not the best way, and the Korean way is not the only way either. Interest and curiosity, proactive use of diversity, and being not bound just by the local circumstances. These are the elements of the global mindset. Now there are 7 of these, but there are basically 2 key elements. One is the ability to step outside of one's base culture. So this is Sydney, Australia, and this is a picture from a tour site of Koreans visiting Sydney, Australia. And if you've been on some of these tours, tours stay all together and they interact with themselves. They might have a tour guide speaking in Korean, showing all the sightseeing and so forth, and the whole group stays together, goes to Australia, goes to Sydney, and comes back. This is appearing global, going outside Korea, but it's not a global mindset. They are all basically transplanting the Korean experience to Sydney. So I'm not trying to criticize, but remember Derek Bok mentioning about afflicting the comfortable or the complacent. I think one can be more global, engaging with other people and learning about the culture. And the other key element of being global is there's no universally correct way to do things. In other words, the Korean way is not the only way to do things. The American way is not the best way. Ultimately, great companies, great startups will integrate in a matrix way different ways of working. So this is a picture of President Moon Jae-in, who's addressing the World Health Assembly. And Korea has done some excellent things with dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and justifiably proud of that accomplishment, including the leadership of President Moon and others in the KCDC and the Ministry of Health and so forth. So Korea has done a very good job. And what President Moon wanted to do is to share the Korean experience with the world. Now, that's a very good thing, and I don't mean to discourage that. But if you look at this picture carefully, President Moon is addressing the World Health Assembly with a wall of Korean flags behind him, suggesting that the Korean way is the best way, that this is a very patriotic thing. This is like advertising for Korea, Korea first, Korea, etc. K-pandemic, whatever you want to call it. There is actually nothing wrong with that, and of course Koreans are very proud of that, but he's speaking to a global audience, and it's not really a global orientation. And just as Americans and Japanese and Europeans can learn from the Korean way, that means that the Americans, the Japanese, the Europeans have this openness. And I think any kind of globalization is in 2 ways. So that raises the interesting point. Is global mindset anti-Korean? The answer, of course, is no. Those with a global mindset explore outside their comfort zone, incorporate the best practices from different cultures, both Korean and otherwise. In other words, it doesn't mean, oh, we're not going to do things the Korean way, and it doesn't mean we're not going to speak Korean, etc., but it means we take the best from all different cultures and try to create an even better thing. And to the extent that startups are about innovation, trying to create better worlds, better products, better services. The global mindset is actually at the core of innovation. So now let's talk about why. Why is the global mindset important? There are two reasons. One is financial. The second one is operational. Let's talk about the financial. So Korea has made incredible progress as a nation. In the late 1950s and 1960s, after the terrible catastrophe of the Korean War, Korea was among the poorest of nations worldwide. And now it is number 11 in the size of the economy. And so Korea is essentially a developed and an advanced economy, advanced society. But if you look at the reality, this is the GDP. Of course, China, United States are quite large, and Korea is just 1.53% of global GDP. So in other words, if you just focus on the Korean market and are not really global, and we're going to talk about that in more detail, you are essentially losing, as we say in America, leaving on the table 99%, nearly 99% of your potential market. In other words, you're wasting a great opportunity. So there's a financial reason why having a global mindset and being able to address those wider markets is very important. Secondly is an operational reason. This is a little bit hard to see, but this shows you in the red the increasing market share in the global auto industry, automobile of Hyundai. Hyundai has rapidly increased, and other companies, Toyota, etc., have decreased. And of course, the same can be said for Samsung and many other Korean products. Now, what's interesting about that is that I was growing up in the United States, and before I came to Korea 10 years ago, and Kia and Hyundai cars 20, 30 years ago were considered very poor quality. And they had lower cost, of course, and so forth, but these were not considered quality cars. And of course, that has improved, and now they're among high quality cars, and that's one reason why they're selling. How does that quality come about? Well, it comes from the global competition. You improve your operations, you improve your quality, you improve your value by having that global competition. If you are just in your own local environment, you're not going to create that same kind of global competition that reaches now into what we call world-class quality. And this is the main reason why Hyundai has increased its market share. So now Americans do not think of Hyundai and Kia cars as inferior quality. They think of them on par with a good car. And that's very important. And that's the only way to make that happen is with that global mindset. So for example, why is Samsung successful? Many people have talked about it, and Lee Kun-hee had a lot of vision and a lot of management and leadership. But one of his key things to the Samsung people was to become more global. And there's a famous story where he visited a refrigerator factory and said to the workers, "You are the best in Korea." And they were all smiling and very happy, because what can be better? Your parents, your peers, other Koreans, they think you're the best. You're in heaven. And then he turned and looked at them and said, "But that is not good enough. You have to be best in the world." And then there's a famous story of how all these mobile phones, millions of dollars worth, he gathered the workers around and had the phones crushed and burned to show that they were not good enough quality. And the workers were crying and so forth, but this was a story that has built the Samsung quality mindset. Now, Samsung is not completely a global company. That was his vision, but it has global operations and global competitiveness, and it has this kind of global mindset. And that's an important component to the company's success. So here's a question. In Korea, who has more of a global mindset? The younger generation or the older generation? The answer may surprise you, and we'll answer that later. Dwelling on this matter of why, let's look at Singapore. So Singapore is less than 1% of the global GDP. And Singapore produces a lot of startups. And think about this. If you are a startup in Singapore who is not globally oriented, in other words, you just make a startup for the Singapore market, people will think you are either crazy or they will just ignore you. In other words, you will fail. So Singapore startups, actually, because their market is very small, they have to think global from the beginning. South Korean startups, their market is kind of big. As I said, it's about 1%, 1.5% of the global GDP. But in reality, it's not really big enough to be successful. So think about like the Singapore startup. If you only want to really do domestic market and only think about global as a kind of way of looking good as opposed to really doing it, then you're not going to be successful. So when should we do it? So they always ask, I worked with many startups in Korea, why not later? 왜 지금은 global 해야 돼요? We should think about being global later. Why? Because 너무 복잡해요. It's too complicated. Or 영어 어려워요. English is too difficult. And most importantly, 다른 분에 이상하겠습니다. In other words, other people will think it's strange that we're global. We're not really Korean. We're not patriotic. We're not part of the group. We're not, we're trying to be different. Which is ironic, of course, because being innovative in startups is supposed to be different. There's a powerful social pressure.
그래서
Listen to this parasite.
이 얘기하려고 하는데 저기 오늘 첫 수업 제가 참가를 좀 해도 될까요? 풀타임으로 보고 싶어서 수업 어떻게 하시는지. Is it okay with you?
That's an incredibly powerful scene. Think about that. I'm sure all of you have seen Parasite. Is it okay with you? In other words, very strange that in Korean society someone will be behaving non-Korean or speaking English. The English usage there was a matter of power, was a matter of social control, was a matter of establishing a hierarchy. In other words, there's a whole drama. And so that's a big problem. And so if startup wants to be global, wants to really be different, that is expressing a kind of difference. It's expressing a kind of specialness. And that's very difficult. So remember those lines from Parasite. So the pressure of social pressure is very important. So this is Ban Ki-moon, perhaps one of the most global of Korean people, and he became Secretary General of the United Nations. So I had a chance to meet him at the Harvard Dongchanghui, the alumni dinner, and this is me with him. And it was very interesting. He gave the speech because he was the honored guest, and he also has affiliation with Harvard, as you may know. And he got to the audience, or he got to the podium, and he looked at the audience. There were a few foreigners, and he said, I was told that I could give the speech in Korean, but I see a few foreigners here, and I will give the speech in English. Now that was very impressive. That's a reason why he's Secretary General, or was Secretary General of the United Nations. I've been in Korea for 10 years. I've been with very experienced, high-level people. If they have a group of Koreans in front of them, and they have the option of speaking in English or Korean, they will, remember the Parasite clip, speak in Korean, because they don't want to appear showing off. They don't want to appear like they're better, or all these sorts of social issues, which is really a pity, because it's in global business, these are not issues. We're just trying to communicate with each other. We're trying to learn from each other. And in Korean society, unfortunately, it does become an issue. So think about Ban Ki-moon. Why is he so great? Why did he just achieve all that? He had a global mindset. So why now? There are two reasons to do it now. One is financial. The other one is operational. So this is a formula we're not going to go into. It basically says that a company's share price, so you're a startup, you're going to make your valuation, you're going to go to venture capital, you want your share price to be high. The share price is based on future dividends, future earnings. That's what this equation tells you. In other words, a unicorn is not a unicorn because of its value now. A unicorn is a unicorn because of its earnings in the future. So if you say that you want to be local and do everything local, but you're not really preparing for the future, which is to be global, then your valuation will be low. And in fact, it's a fact, they call it the Korea discount, that in the stock market, Korean companies are actually somewhat valued less than comparable fundamentals related to other stock markets. They talk about North Korea risk and all that, but part of it is this lack of globalization, which compromises future earnings. There's an operational reason why you should be doing it from the beginning. Why are startups more flexible, adaptable, and innovative? Because they're small. Why are big companies less flexible, adaptive, and innovative? Because they're big. So when should you implement a globalization transformation? When you are big and very difficult to change, or in the beginning when you are small? I think the answer is obvious. So now let's talk about where. So it really depends on the market. Singapore is a very good place to start to become globalized, particularly Southeast Asia. Africa is very interesting, United States, of course, and Europe. So it depends on your market, depends on your capabilities, on your resources, on your network, on your connections. But let's give an example. Courage to go out of the comfort zone. So here is Samsung Construction, Samsung Mulsan. In 1981, they built oil storage plants in Libya. In 1981, Libya was not a safe place to be. There was a lot of problems, terrorism, war, everything. But Samsung people went out there and built very boring but important oil storage tanks. And based on that experience, eventually Samsung was the construction company for the tallest building in the world, also in the Middle East, the Burj Khalifa. So these people here had the courage to go out of the comfort zone, Libya, and then a vision to ultimately do even more than that, not just oil storage tanks. So who? Diversity is the key to globalization. Some key elements are adapting to new cultures, managing different cultures, proactive use of diversity, not bound by the local. So let's look at this. This is Park Geun-hye and the creative economy. Is this a diverse group of people? I think not. In fact, they're all, standing the same. They all have the suits. They're almost all holding the hands the same. They're all been instructed to wear shirts with nice collars but no ties. They're all men. They're all Korean, 100%. This is not a diverse group. You can see Lee Jae-young here. And so this was the creative economy. I think some people have said the creative economy has not achieved its goals. I think one reason is they did not understand the importance of the diversity. And of course, scandals come out between these two because ultimately value is produced through innovation. And if you don't have the innovation, then maybe there are other ways to accomplish these goals, not maybe good ways. So this is a big problem. So how should we globalize? How we should engage with foreigners, global partnerships. This is me with FRT people engaging in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and I'll talk about this. And very important to avoid consulting firms that help you go global without leaving the comfort of the Korean bubble. So you may have a consulting firm that says, we're going to help you go to United States. But don't worry, you don't have to do anything. We'll do everything in Korean. We'll handle it. You don't have to be uncomfortable. Any startup who is trying to innovate, trying to be out of the comfort zone, somebody tells them, you're going to be comfortable, don't worry, you don't have to do anything strange or etc., that's a problem. The key to being globalized is to indeed be out of your comfort zone. And in fact, as they said at President Bach in the Harvard address, if you really want to make an impact, you should help make those who are comfortable actually uncomfortable to change the world. So ultimately, diversity is the key to innovation. So this is a Harvard Business Review article, How Diversity Can Drive Innovation. Forbes, Innovation Management, Why Diversity is the Mother of Creativity. Diversity is confirmed to boost innovation and financial results. The mix that matters. And this is the World Economic Forum. The business case for diversity in the workplace is now overwhelming. So if you look back at that creative economy picture, that is not fitting with what we know, what economists around the world know, and what top business people around the world know. So the last question is how. So I'm going to give a few examples very quickly on how to achieve some of this globalization. As I mentioned, I have a number of appointments, academia. I work with genomics companies, I work with robot companies, I work with digital healthcare, venture capital. And so I'm going to give some examples. So this is our digital healthcare system, cognitive training for dementia, Chime Panghe device. And I'm in Singapore and being interviewed by Channel News Asia, so we talk about this, and that aired on Channel News Asia, so Southeast Asia, many people can see about this technology. I made connections. This is Fresenius Kidney Care. They help with dialysis patients. This is the managing director, Anbu Srinivasan of Fresenius Kidney Care. So patients, while they're getting dialysis, can possibly see this app and get their dementia CHIME prevention, making connections between different groups. Executing a partnership. This is me with Dr. Billy Hardy with the Eye Clinic, and to bring this product to the Eye Clinic, which is a group of wellness clinics around Singapore. Implementing the partnerships. These are the seniors who are now working on this CHIME Panghe, and this is this Channel News Asia television crew. Combining innovations. So this is Dr. Jang Jae-ho with FRT. They have a wearable robot. This are a group in the Netherlands which creates a spinal frame and backpack. We put the two together to make a truly world-leading wearable robot product. So we went to Amsterdam to arrange this partnership, global partnership. The Korean product is very good. The Dutch product is very good. We put the two together to make an even better product. I was in Singapore for a conference, and I was trying out another wearable robot by a Japanese company. And then at that conference speaking here about CHIME and so forth. This is at a ECCK, European Chamber of Commerce panel. I was talking about innovation. This is a little bit difficult to see. But right down here is Christoph, who is the managing director in the Fresenius Hong Kong office. And we were talking and engaging, and that's how we got the idea of putting the CHIME Panghe, the dementia prevention system, in the dialysis clinics. Trying things out in reality, so going out and trying competing products. Discussing, advising. This is in Malaysia. This is the Minister of Health of Malaysia. Initial partnership discussion. This is Mr. DJ Shin, the CEO of Eidware. This is Dr. Billy Hardy, as I mentioned, and this is how we started the partnership. Partnership launch with ProAge. This is Isaiah Ching, again DJ Shin. So we made this partnership to bring this product to Singapore. And then an innovation discussion in New York City. This is Elliot Harris, the chief economist for the United Nations, and also talking about Alzheimer's and dementia prevention and so forth. So engaging with the outside world, making partnerships, bringing different ideas together, different people, that's innovation, and that's going global. So we talked about the what, the why, the when, the where, the who, and the how. So remember the question in Korea, who has more of a global mindset, the younger generation or the older generation? I'll tell you something very interesting. I think the older generation might have more of a global mindset. Of course, the younger generation, and you may be upset because many of you are young, they have more exposure to the global. But remember, the Koreans in the 50s and 60s, they were very poor. And to only engage among themselves would only lead to failure. They had to go global. They had no choice, financially, operationally, etc. So the people who built the Hyundai, Samsung, etc., went to Libya in 1981 under great danger. That's the global mindset. And the older people may not speak English as well, but it's not about English ability, it's about the mindset. And I think Korea is very successful, and younger people, they don't need to go out so global. You know, everything can be done in Korea. A startup can be in Korea. Why do we need to go out? And this kind of mindset, I think, is not good for global success. And so think about that. So I'm going to end with this story. Albert Einstein and Sir Arthur Eddington. As you know, Albert Einstein was the founder of relativity, general relativity, one of the greatest theories of science. And Albert Einstein was a theoretical physicist. Arthur Eddington was an experimental astrophysicist. They had to from different fields. Albert Einstein was German. Arthur Eddington was English. Albert Einstein was Jewish. Eddington was Christian. And they did, this picture is from 1930, but they did their collaboration in 1919. And 1919 was the year after the First World War, where hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Germans and English were shooting at each other and killing each other in the fields of France. 1918. The year after 1919, they made the collaboration. Eddington's experiments, in particular his observation of the solar eclipse in 1919, proved Einstein's theory. And this was amazing because it, in a way, disproved Isaac Newton. And Isaac Newton was the hero of English science. So this collaboration required both men to go out of their comfort zone. And it's a tribute to Einstein and Eddington, their geniuses, not just because they know how to do formulas and they're very good at science, but they're geniuses because they see how to make these connections across cultures, across boundaries, and even across conflict. So in the beginning, your idea is not always pretty. This is the airplane, the first airplane with the Wright brothers, all of you are familiar. Dreams can fly, and this can lead to moonshots and Mars shots. But you should keep in mind that this is the Wright brothers, and apart from a single statement to the press, failed public demonstration. The Wright brothers did not publicize their events. After their demonstration flight in France in 1908, they were accepted as pioneers and received extensive media coverage. In other words, it wasn't until they actually went out of America, engaged in France, that they actually got the recognition and were able to move forward the idea. So it's not just a Korean problem, it's also, it's a general problem. If you stay in your own world, you will not be successful, you will not be recognized. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer, any questions if you contact me via LinkedIn or by email. Please take care and keep safe during this very difficult COVID time.